For the last couple of years, we've been doing a weird thing in Cardano. As members of the ecosystem, it's as if we've been sitting in the control tower with a whole bunch of planes circling overhead, waiting for the time when they can finally land because the airport and the runway were still under construction. The whole time that was going on, we also had a lot of the crypto world whispering in our ears that the airport would never be finished and the planes would never be able to land. Luckily, most of us never left that control tower. We just kept on hodling, and every day we were joined by more and more people who believed in the ideals of this massive undertaking. Now the airport and the runway are complete or substantially complete enough, and it's time for all of these projects to finally touch down. Ready? Let's go. Today, we are going to discuss a whole bunch of project updates, including Indigo and their 5 governance proposals, MuesliSwap V2 progress, a new Pavia roadmap on the way, and the Virtua land claim event schedule, along with some new Cardano Island map details. But first, we'll cover the latest video on Cardano as a members-based organization from Charles. If your first thought when you saw this image was, my man, that is a float plane, and it is obviously about to land in a harbor. There is no runway involved here whatsoever. Listen, I just liked the imagery, okay? Or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool. I would love your delegation at the Army of Spies stake pool. Ticker AOS. Charles recently dropped this video called Road to a Polyglot Ecosystem for Cardano. A little bit more on that title in a second. But first, you should know how this video came about. Rick McCracken did a couple of polls, which had pretty interesting results. So the first poll was something like this. If Apple were to put in a Catalyst proposal to integrate Cardano with Apple Pay and they wanted $12 million, how would you vote? 16% of people said they would downvote that. 63% said they would upvote it. The next poll is, hey, if DC Spark wanted $8 million to build a Cardano node implementation in Rust, also, how would you vote? And the vote was kind of similar. Had a few more down, less than 1% more downvotes, and 46% upvotes versus 63% for Apple, which was kind of surprising. I thought for sure the DC Spark version of this would get more upvotes and less downvotes than Apple, but this is how the polls came about. Charles made this video sort of in response to these polls, and he makes a really interesting point here. But I think even more important than the point he makes in the video is the spirit of his response to these polls. And this is one of those videos that I think could easily be sort of glossed over by people without them paying too much attention to it. But this video exhibits one of the things about Charles and Cardano that's made me always believe in Charles and what he was trying to do. It's made me, this thing he does in this video is part of why I've always believed that he was really out to build the ecosystem he said he was. First up, we have to ask, what does Charles mean by a polyglot ecosystem? He tells us he means an ecosystem where you have multiple clients developed by different groups using different languages, coming from different perspectives. And the second we have this diversity of clients in an ecosystem, the next question that comes up is, okay, if we have a bunch of different clients, what is the canonical client? And Charles points out this is very related to the question of what is the canonical wallet when you have this diversity of development groups producing clients and wallets. So the point he makes that I think is really important here is that there shouldn't be a canonical wallet or client. He doesn't come out and say, hey, Daedalus is the canonical wallet in Cardano, which some people might expect. He says, that's not what we're going for at all. There shouldn't be a canonical wallet. There should be a reference standard for clients and for wallets. Here's how this would work. Cardano would start operating as a members-based organization with this concept of CTFs, which, despite the way it sounds, is not a designation as to whether or not someone is willing to be your temporary significant other. Instead, it is Cardano Technical Fellows, who might be members of the community or staff even of organizations like IOG, who might be on loan to the MBO, the members-based organization, to create and maintain a formal core reference standard. Charles says this should be in AGDA, which is something he characterizes. It's a language that he characterizes as sort of a super Haskell. It's even more super than Haskell. And this AGDA formal core reference standard would not be something like a production client that you might be familiar with. It wouldn't be something like Daedalus. Daedalus has a whole bunch of extra code in it, which would go far beyond the reference standard. The reference standard would just be the core of what's required in a client or wallet. Things going forward that might come out of the SIP process, which of course is the Cardano Improvement Proposal process. As SIPs come along and we decide we need to add things to the core reference standard, they would go through the SIP process. And if they made it through, they would be sort of added to this AGDA formal core reference standard. The great thing about this idea is that once you have this AGDA reference standard core, you could then have groups go ahead and create a Rust client and maybe a TypeScript client. And the Haskell client would no longer be the canonical client in Cardano. Instead, it would just be another client in another language. And these clients could be certified or not. So we, as the community, would be asking questions like, hey, here's this new client that I could use for Cardano. Is it safe? Is it going to work when it comes time for another hard fork combinator event? Is it going to be able to upgrade seamlessly like we've seen in the past with the Haskell client and pretty much everything else in Cardano that was canonical? So this makes sense if you think about it, because if we just gave a bunch of money to some development entity and we said, hey, go ahead and create a Rust client, they're probably going to go ahead and create a Rust client. And, some other group might go ahead and create a TypeScript client. But if there's no overarching, core reference standard, then there's no guarantee that when we get to the next hard fork combinator event and we want to have another one of these seamless upgrades, there's no guarantee that the development teams who created this Rust client and this TypeScript client would have done the right things so they could just seamlessly upgrade. But if they're all working off this core reference standard, this set of code that's going to allow them all to upgrade seamlessly at the next hard fork combinator event, and that allows them to be certified so we know that they're safe and they're going to meet the kind of standards we're used to in Cardano, then everything's great. You can go ahead and have different teams develop all these different clients, have this diversity of wallets, and if they all meet the reference standard and they can be certified, then you can rest assured that it's going to meet those same standards we're used to in Cardano. And at the same time, just like with a lot of things that Charles proposes, he's like, there can also be not certified clients. If you want to have a client that's not certified, you can go ahead and do that. This is a little bit reminiscent of what he's talked about with the dApp store in the Lace wallet. He's always said you could have certified dApps and not certified dApps, and that's perfectly fine. This is part of what I've always loved about Charles. He's not trying to have the IOG wallet Lace coming up and the Haskell client created by IOG. He's not trying to make them the perma-canonical wallet and client for Cardano. He wants the ecosystem to grow and for Voltaire to be a real thing where we have a diversity of teams creating a diversity of clients and wallets for the entire ecosystem. This is pretty different than a lot of ecosystems. This is the kind of true decentralization of development that we've always been promised, that Voltaire was always supposed to bring us to. This is not what you do if you're trying to maintain some kind of iron-fisted grasp on the community. This is what you do when you're truly striving for decentralization and an ecosystem that will outgrow and outlast you and hopefully outlast all of us. Here's a purple float plane coming in for a landing. Indigo DAO Kickstart campaign. So the Indigo Labs team feels that it is time to begin fostering an engaged and diverse DAO community to run the protocol once launched. In planning for this, they will present a series of governance proposals to the DAO throughout October and early November, which will lay the groundwork for the launch of the Indigo protocol. So these will be off-chain temperature checks submitted by the Indigo Labs team through the Indigo Governance Forum. So they're going to do this week by week so that each of the proposals gets full consideration, it looks like. The first one will be the DAO Constitution, the Indigo DAO Constitution. That will be proposed on October 3rd. Then they've got details around the Indigo Foundation, October 10th, Indigo DAO voting procedures, October 17th, details around iAssets, October 24th, and an Indigo launch proposal on October 31st. So here's some very concrete plans from one of the big Cardano DeFi projects. It looks like they are getting everything in order to begin the launch sequence, or in this case, the landing sequence of the Indigo platform and DAO. Speaking of DeFi, we also saw quite a bit of progress from MuesliSwap on MuesliSwap V2 in the form of a brand new website. They say the Vossel upgrade marks the start of huge launches on their decks. They're very happy to announce that their new website is now live. You can go check that out right now. And you can see from this graphic, next up are liquidity pools and yield farming on the road to version 2 of MuesliSwap. They say during the next epoch, we will deploy MuesliSwap V2 contracts, and in doing so, launch liquidity pools. And in October, they will be launching yield farming, and they are even identifying exactly what yield farms they will have on their platform. In Metaverse news, we also found out that this week we'll be getting a new roadmap from Pavia, or at least an update to the roadmap. Whenever I see roadmap update, I'm always super curious. Is this going to be a more detailed roadmap, or are we just going to be pushing dates backwards because this is software development, so it always goes backwards? It's never like, hey, we're actually going to be done with our software development way sooner than we thought. We're moving things up. That's like very seldomly the case. It's always backwards. But I have a feeling in this case, we might also get some additional details. And Pavia has some pretty big things to announce timing wise, like when we can actually be on the ground walking around, when the Pavia Plaza might be available, things like that. So I'm pretty excited to see what this roadmap entails exactly. We also got some important details on the Virtua Cardano Island land claim event. If you watch this channel, you already know this is when we turn our deeds into actual locations on the Cardano Island map. We take our deeds and we pick out exactly what parcel on the map we want that deed to correspond to. So we've got an actual time for this now. We knew it was going to be on the 30th of September. We didn't know what time. It's going to be 5 p.m. UTC. And we already knew it was going to be a multi-day event. So here's why some of you are going to be very lucky and why I myself am very unlucky as far as this schedule goes. And we'll talk about some of the ramifications of that in just a second. So day one, which would be September 30th, Friday, the legendary plots will get to pick their parcels. Saturday will be legendary and special. Sunday will be legendary, special, and rare. On Monday, they're adding the uncommons. And on Tuesday, they're adding the common plot holders. So I know a bunch of you are probably going to be in each of these categories. I'm in this category down here. So I won't get to pick my plot until Tuesday. Why am I telling you this? Let's look at the map and we'll talk about why. Virtua also dropped a new video with some additional details about the Cardano Island map, namely the location of the condos, which are here, up here, and down here. We also found out this is where right here is where the airstrip and the hangar are going to be. This is the location of the Cardano headquarters right here. This is the location of the Virtua hub. I believe it's up in here. There's some kind of a nature park. These two things are bodies of water, and they definitely mentioned using scuba gear to search the bodies of water and possibly finding some things. So you'll remember several weeks ago, we talked about this circle right here being where I'm going to try to put my large parcel, and anybody in the Army of Spies who wants to make a little Army of Spies conclave. We do have a body of water, so we could call this Spy Beach, but it's a small amount of beach for a big circle. Maybe Spy Village is better. Spy Village, something like that. The Spy Enclave, something. Anyways, anybody who wants to be in the Army, join the Army of Spies, or who's in the Army of Spies, if you have a parcel and you want to claim some land around a bunch of other Army of Spies people, feel free to grab a parcel in this circle down here in the bottom left-hand corner. Here's the thing. I'm picking last since I'm a common landholder. So if there aren't enough large parcels to go around, if all the large parcels in Spy Village over here are gone, I'll try to pick one as close as possible. Maybe over here, over here, over here, or over here. Obviously, if there's still a large parcel left over here, I'll pick one somewhere in here. If not, I'll have to expand out into one of these areas. I think we should just stick with the original plan. I know some people might have the impulse to say, no, we should be over here closer to the Cardano headquarters, but it's all Cardano Island. I say we stick with the original plan so people aren't confused. We make this the Army of Spies enclave. And even though I'm picking last on Tuesday, I'll try to pick something as close as possible to this circle, even if there's nothing left in this circle. I hope you had a great day yesterday, and the rest of this week will be a fantastic one for you. I will talk to you tomorrow.